go. Thank you all for bearing with us. I apologize.
No problem. That's great. I'm so happy we were able to double check that. So as I was saying, I first want to just thank Dr. Robinson and the entire team, Mr. Gale, and all the teachers and support staff at RVA. They've done a truly fabulous job this year, not just in terms of teaching and learning, but really creating a wonderful community that I know folks have really come to love. And so first, just wanted to express my gratitude and appreciation for all the hard work that has gone into that, and under a very quick time frame. And so I think everybody should be extremely proud of what they have accomplished this year. In my perfect world, I would keep RVA exactly as it is, in a world of unlimited funds and unlimited options. Unfortunately, that's not the reality that we live in. In addition, given that RVA was created in response to COVID-19, fortunately, we appear to be on the other side of Omicron now, and hopefully are getting to a more stable phase of the pandemic where the need for virtual learning won't be as significant. So when we look at that element, and then the fact that RVA is funded entirely by one-time federal dollars that we got because of the pandemic, once those dollars are spent, they don't come back. And the program costs about $7 million as it's currently set up. Because of all those factors, what I proposed is a scaled back program, so not ending it, just a scaled back version that, rather than serving anybody who wanted virtual, just not sure we're able to financially afford that, but to serve children for whom virtual really is the only option. Children who can't be in person. So I'm talking about children who are homebound because of illness or injury, children who are on long-term suspensions, and we want to make sure that they stay engaged in their learning, both academically and socially and emotionally. And there may be other cases as well of students who have an interruption to their in-person learning, and we need to be able to provide virtual instruction so that they stay connected and stay engaged. That is a shift in what the program's key objective is. I recognize that. And it's a smaller program. Right now, my proposal has 10 staff members for the program, which of course is significantly smaller than the roughly 70 that are currently budgeted. And so because of that, of course, we shared the news of this potential change. I do want to apologize to everybody on the call. The letter you received should not have said that this was occurring. It should have said that this was a proposal. Ultimately, this is not my decision. This is the school board's decision. And of course, I will respect whatever conclusion they come to. But I did want to be very honest about the fiscal reality. That it is just going to be very difficult without cutting from a whole bunch of other schools to be able to maintain this program into the future at the level that it's at. That doesn't take anything away from all the great work that Dr. Robinson, Mr. Gale, and the teachers and everybody have done. They've done an admirable job, and I know there is a strong OWL community that feels a great pride in RVA, and I love that. I'm just trying to lean into the hard choices that we have to make in a world of limited resources. And I'm happy to delve into any of the details and try to answer any questions that folks may have. With that, Dr. Robinson, I'll pass it back to you.
Okay, so thank you for that, Mr. Cameras. Thank you so much. I'm just going to go to the chat, and I'm going to start with the first question, if that's okay. We're at Q&A.
Sure.
First question comes from Robin. Will Encore not be part of the redesigned RVA?
I would like it to be a part of the redesigned RVA. I think it all just comes down to, again, how much we're able to do on a full-time basis versus part-time, given the number of students and the size of the budget. But I would very much want, our children who are homebound because of an injury, that they get music and they get art experiences as well. So I would like that very much to continue. We'll have to kind of look through the details, see how many students would need it. And it might be the kind of thing where there's not a full-time music teacher as part of RVA, but maybe there's an existing music teacher at another school that part-time provides that virtual support for the kids in RVA. But I think a lot would depend on how many kids ultimately would need the services.
Thank you. Going back to the chat, another question from Ms. LP. Does your proposal only apply to scholars as a part-time solution?
I think the question is asking, is it only for, kids who would have those interruptions and so would only be accessing it on a part-time basis? Yes, but I think some students in those situations, they're long-term situations. So it could actually be for months, if not even more than a school year. So I think there are many different kinds of timelines pertaining to kids who are homebound or kids on long-term suspensions. But yes, I do think largely I would call it a long-term part-time experience for kids.
Okay. From Shamel Shabazz, good evening. Would the Virtual Virginia program be an option to the students?
Well, Virtual Virginia is always an option to Virginia students if that's the route they would like to go. The feedback I've heard from families and from staff is that it is not the preferred option. So this program that I'm proposing would be fully RPS teachers, RPS run. We would not be using Virtual Virginia, except perhaps in rare cases of special courses that we weren't able to offer ourselves. But again, the feedback I've received is that Virtual Virginia was not an ideal fit for us.
From Kimberly Blair, will LEAP/ESL not be part of the modified RVA?
LEAP, ESL, special education, they'll all be a part of it. They have to be. A, it's what kids deserve. B, it's required by law.
I can jump in, Cindy. Will the RVA liaisons be part of the proposed new RVA?
I don't think we would need the same level of RVA liaisons as we currently have. I don't know if that means none of them, but it would at most be a much smaller group given the scaled back size of the program in the proposal.
Thank you. And then Kara's asking, will students with IEPs who have found it more supportive of their needs to be included in the proposed new RVA?
No, if they did not have a condition that prevented them from coming to school, they would not be a part of this program. I do think we would potentially run afoul of federal law when it comes to special education. There's something called least restrictive environment, meaning you want to have kids with special needs in the least restrictive environment, meaning with general education kids physically as much as possible. And I think if we created a separate program that had students with IEPs in it, we would be running afoul of that law. I don't know that for certain, but that would be my best assumption based upon everything I know of special education law.
Great. And I'll ask one more before I turn it over to Dr. Robinson. There's been a lot of talk about the mask mandates and those laws, and someone wants to know, does this mean that my child will still have to wear the mask or be vaccinated? I'm assuming if they have to come back to in-person.
So on the mask front, if you want your child to continue to wear a mask, they of course can and should continue to wear a mask. The only change that happened recently is there's a new law that allows any parents who don't want their children to wear a mask. That is now their right. But we are strongly encouraging everybody to continue to wear masks. It remains our policy for all adults. And unless a parent tells us directly that they don't want their child to wear a mask, all students will have to continue as well.
So this question comes again from Ms. LP. If the program is part-time, how would that work for teachers and how many students?
I think I may have misunderstood this question the first time, Ms. LP. It would be full-time, just not full year, I think, for many kids. So I apologize for that lack of clarity. I think the kids who are participating would have a full day. It's just that they may not be in RVA from September to June because the reason they're out of school may only last 6 months long. That's what I meant by part-time, not 8 to 10 a.m. I didn't mean that. So I apologize for any confusion.
Thank you. This question comes from Shamel Shabazz. You mentioned that there are other options available to Virginia residents and students. Could you elaborate?
So the Virtual Virginia program is available to students in Virginia if families want to go that route. There are also other virtual programs in Virginia that cost, of course. And then there's homeschool, which is also available to every Virginia family. So there are a number of options. Again, the Virtual Virginia one is run by the state, so it's highly certified, and it's got all the kind of key requirements and whatnot. But there are other options as well. And then again, homeschool.
Thank you. This question comes from Robin. How was 10 chosen as the magic number? From this 10, how many positions are being offered to current staff?
There's nothing magic to 10. It's an effort just to try to get the costs down to a reasonable level that we thought we could afford. But again, there's nothing magic about 10. If in talking with Dr. Robinson and folks, feels like, if we could get to 12, that really changes things. I'm of course open to discussions. But again, just trying to be honest about the fiscal reality. And then as for the positions, given that the nature of the program is a little bit different and the student population we're targeting a little bit different, we are taking new applications for those roles if this plan is approved by the school board. Of course, we would be delighted to hire folks from the current RVA staff who would want to continue with this new program. That would be my priority, is to fill it up with folks who are currently on staff, given your expertise and your experience and so on. But we're not starting that until, again, the board makes their final decisions.
Thank you. This question comes from Monique. It's kind of related. What happens to the current staff, families that may not be supported by the 10 positions, but cannot return to in-person learning for health reasons? And there's another question, but I think we'll maybe just start with those. Yeah.
Well, again, any student who for health reasons is not able to come back in person would be covered by this program. And so if that means 10 isn't enough, we need 11 or 12 or 13 to meet the needs of all those children, they would be covered by this program. What this program would not cover is a family who just happens to like virtual. Again, it's no judgment there. We'd love to be able to do that. It's just a financial reality. So that's the group of families that would not be able to participate.
Thank you. And we've kind of covered why Virtual Virginia is not being considered a primary option. But Ms. LP raises the question, if Virtual Virginia is still an option, then who will pay for that parent, and asking if parents would be paying for Virtual Virginia?
Yes, I mean, one of the significant expenses of the current model is us paying the tuition for virtual Virginia. So yes, that would be at the parents' expense if that is the route that they would like to go.
And then I'm going to go to the other Q&A portion in Zoom. We have some questions there. Monique is asking, what happens to the current virtual staff?
So the current virtual staff, if this is approved, would technically be what's called rift, meaning their positions go away. However, given the number of vacancies that we have in our school system right now, I'm confident that nearly all, if not all, of those staff would find another position in the school system. In fact, we've already set up some transfer fairs for anyone who would like to already make that decision for themselves and say, you know what, whether this new program exists or not, I would like to go ahead and secure a spot at one of our other schools. And so we've set that up to help make sure that they can find a good landing spot. Again, while I can't 100% guarantee it, I do feel very confident that everybody would find a great spot somewhere else within the system.
Great. And can you say a little bit more about why Virtual Academy can't be switched from a program to an actual school that could be included in an operational budget like Fox?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, it really just comes down to dollars. You know, right now this program is costing $7 million. We don't have $7 million extra in our budget. Right now, those $7 million are coming from the federal stimulus funds. Once those funds are gone, they're gone. And to make matters even more difficult, we're actually starting next year 7 million in the hole because of lower state funding. So we're starting 7 in the hole, and we don't have 7 million to support this program in our operating budget. So in some ways, we're 14 million in the hole. I wish we weren't in that situation truly, but we just don't have the funds right now to be able to maintain the program as it is.
Thank you. And then what about staff who can't return in person due to a compromised immune system?
In those cases, what I would ask is you reach out to the talent office so that we can talk with you, understand your individual situation, and see if we can find a good solution for you.
Thanks. Dr. Robinson, do you want to go back to the chat?
Sure. If the number of students have not been determined, then how can the number of staff be determined? And that comes from Tracy Holmes.
Yeah, great question. This was an estimate at the time based on some initial analysis of how many students would need to be served. But again, that's something that we would refine over the next couple of weeks. And again, if necessary, adjust the numbers up or down, whatever the case may be. We still have some wiggle room to be able to do that. Just not, can't go from 10 to 70, but we can go from 10 to 12 or 15, whatever ultimately is the right number for the number of kids that we need.
Thank you. There's a question in the chat from Monique. Why can't Virtual Academy program be transitioned from COVID program to school? We have charter schools, special education schools, behavioral schools. Why not virtual? And I think we kind of talked through that about the cost. But if there's anything you want to share more on that, if not, I can go.
There's nothing inherently problematic about it being a school. Again, it's just the cost. The entire program, again, is not funded by our actual budget. It's all based on the COVID relief dollars. Once those dollars are gone, we're not going to be able to afford the program. And so that's why we're trying to take some proactive steps to scale it back, serve the kids who need it the most, and keep it financially sustainable for the long term.
Thank you. This is from Francis Rudd. The 10 staff includes support staff and teachers. How many students are you thinking in each virtual class?
I think the initial estimates were around 20, so something on the order of 200 students. But again, we're, want to work with Dr. Robinson and others to think through all the different student profiles that make sense, evaluate how many of those students there are, and then determine, again, as I said, do we need to, add a little bit, or is there a particular type of position we need to add so that we can get to the exact final number.
And from Alfonso Cole, when are the kids supposed to go back in person if they do?
Well, RVA will stay as it currently is for the rest of this school year. So nobody needs to come back in person this school year. If the proposal that we're talking about goes into effect, then next school year, families would need to come back in person who didn't qualify for the new program.
Thank you. And I'll read one more question before I kick it back over to you, Dr. Harris. From David Missler, what teachers are eligible to stay virtual?
Well, everybody would be able to apply to the new program. So anybody who's currently on staff would be able to apply. One of the things we'd be looking at, though, would be expertise with the particular student populations that we're talking about. I think that expertise probably exists within the current staff. But again, the positions would be open to anybody on the current staff or anybody else who wanted to try.
Francis would like to know, will there be a transition plan for students that have been virtual since they started school?
Yes, I do think that's something that we would want to work with Dr. Robinson and Mr. Gale on in terms of, what kinds of supports some of our young people would need who've now been virtual, well, really for 2 years. And by the time school starts next fall, will be almost 3 years. And absolutely, that's something we'd want to talk through and make sure that they're ready for.
The next question is, what can we do to save this program with the school board? I can take that one, given that in my department is all about advocacy. And we encourage families to, you have the right to advocate for what is best for your child. There are several ways to do that, including during public comment, during school board members. You can also share that in writing, as well as always share your feedback with myself. Superintendent Camrus are extremely open to hear from our families. While we are presenting a proposed shift based on the financial conditions we are in as a school division, you have every right to share your voice and your thoughts around what you feel is best for your child. So those are some of the ways, but I'm also happy I put my email in the chat to talk to any families about ways they can advocate. Great question. Next question, Charmaine. Will virtual liaison have a reduction in salaries if they have to go back to in person?
Well, I think it really depends on what role that they take when they go back in person. If they, I know some of them served as instructional assistants before. That is a lower paid role. If they choose to go back to that role, then yes, that would have a lower salary. However, many may choose to apply for other roles that they're qualified for that may have a similar salary or potentially even a higher salary. So it really depends on which role they choose to pursue in the physical in-person school setting.
Thanks. And then Ms. King, I'm going to try, I know you have several questions in here, so I'm going to try my best to pull them out. I think you're asking how many students will RPS fund for Virtual Virginia, if that is even an option. And then has some questions around if we're thinking about Fox parents and students who may want a virtual option and wondering, will they pay as well? Let me start there.
So right now, we do not have any funds budgeted to pay for Virtual Virginia next year. As for Fox students, they're only going to be virtual for several weeks. I'm hoping no more than I don't want to make any predictions, but we're trying to get them into a physical space very soon. So no, they would not have an option for virtual next year.
And I think the last part of your question, I can take the foundation right now, those donations are for our Fox families, our Fox, specifically for Fox, sorry, as a result of the fire. Francis Rudd is asking, so will the RVA be under a different program such as detention?
No, no. RVA will still be part of RPS as it is currently.
And then lastly, and we'll kick it over to Ms. Robinson, would it be that much if we used RPS teachers for the secondary students instead of virtual Virginia?
I'm not sure I got the gist of that one, Dr. Harris.
So I think the question is about, because we use Virtual Virginia as the primary mode of instruction for our secondary learners, the question is around, would it be more cost effective if there were RPS teachers instead of paying Virtual Virginia tuition?
I do think it would be more cost effective, but it also then depends on how many students. I think one challenge about us doing it in-house is that it's very expensive to offer a full set of high school offerings when you have to have teachers for every different discipline. And so we might have to supplement some of that with, if not full-time RVA folks, then maybe part-time folks from other schools as well, to have all the different kinds of electives and things of that nature that you often have at the high school level.
Okay, and then from Kara Stupp, why can't courses at Virtual Virginia continue to be paid for by RPS for students, specifically thinking about students with IEPs and needs that the IEP team believe are better served for the student with Virtual Virginia courses?
Again, I would say two things. One, I am not sure that that would be permissible under the law to be directing students with IEPs to Virtual Virginia. I think my assessment would be that it would be a violation of the LRE requirement. In addition, ultimately, again, this is a funding issue. Virtual Virginia is very expensive, and one of the motivating factors here for scaling back the program is to contain costs. But for me, the overarching issue is that LRE matter. Of course, I'm not a lawyer, but that would be my assessment.
Thank you for that. And then from Carreras, there's a question, will Encore teachers be eligible to stay next year? And I think we did cover that earlier. The idea is that Encore teachers are certainly needed and wanted for a full experience. But Mr. Cameron, if there's anything else you want to add to that, otherwise we'll move to the next piece.
Yes, we certainly want to provide a full experience to students who are participating, even in the reimagined RVA. I don't believe we would have the funds, the positions to have a full Encore team, but what we might be able to do is have one or two Encore folks to serve most of the needs, and then maybe there's part-time work done by other teachers in RPS to support other Encore needs for the kids at RVA. So we'd have to kind of work through the details of the schedule, what that would look like.
Thank you. And then from Ann Ife-Quinigwe, hi, Dr. Ann. If all RVA students are still connected to their home schools, why would the proposed budget not support students whose families choose RVA over in-person instruction at their home school? I'll stop there because there's a...
Again, because all of the teachers, all the liaisons, support staff, everybody, all their salaries are paid for out of federal stimulus dollars. And so once those dollars go away, there's no money to pay for all of those salaries. So that is the crux of the challenge.
So in reading this, the set of questions and commentary more, there's questions around the whether or not it would make sense to move teachers from homeschool. So I'll read it out. A teacher who is assigned to a homeschool could move to RVA to support students whose families do not feel comfortable with in-person instruction. Would there be a budgetary impact? Wouldn't staffing change proportionately with the number of students whose families opt for RVA? There would be no additional brick and mortar expenses for RVA, no extra custodial costs, no extra utilities, etc. It seems the actual cost to support virtual learning would be minimal. And that's the comment in its entirety.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. Bear with me as I try to explain why, unfortunately, the math doesn't work out on that. So let's say there is a class of 25 elementary students at RVA, and 3 of them come from Ginter Park, and 2 come from Cary, and 4 come from Woodville, and 1 comes from Red, and 2 come from Carver, and so on. You can't take a teacher away from a school in, let's say, 3rd grade, this 3rd grade class, when only 3 kids from that grade are in RVA, because then you're losing a whole class's worth by moving that teacher, right? If I move a teacher from Carver over to RVA, but there's only 3 kids from Carver in RVA, well, now there's 25 kids at Carver who don't have a teacher. And so that's the challenge. The nature of RVA is that it is plucking a few kids from schools all across the division. And you can't just simply move the teachers over, because it then impacts a whole lot of kids all across the division. Again, I wish we had the funds to be able to keep this going as it is. It's just not the reality that we're in.
Thank you. From Francis Rudd, how much of the cost, 7 million, is paid to Virtual Virginia for tuition?
It's a good question. I don't know that number off the top of my head, but we can certainly get that and make sure Dr. Robinson can share that with you guys.
From Monique, where can we see the budget that's set for approval? And would we reach out to you or our school board rep for amendment suggestions on line items?
Yep, you can see the budget on, oh, hi Blue, nice to see you, buddy. On Board Docs, which is the website that hosts all of the documents for school board meetings. You can get there from our website as well. It has all the budget materials, my budget presentation, and so on. As I said, we'll be working on some updates to that in preparation for Tuesday's meeting. So this weekend, if you go onto Board Docs, look up the meeting for Tuesday, and you'll be able to see all the documents that will highlight the changes. As for advocacy, please reach out to me, reach out to your board member. You can come and share public comment. I think all of those avenues, as Dr. Harris noted, are excellent ways to have your voice heard.
Thank you. I'll read one more before I kick it back over to Dr. Harris. From Katie, for how long will the new RVA program be funded?
Well, I would like the new program to be funded forever. Now, it would still be funded next year on the federal dollars, but what we would try to do, since it's a much smaller amount, we would try to begin to move those positions over to our operating budgets so that they're safe for the future. So look, I would like RVA to be a permanent part of the RPS family. We just have to do it in a way that's fiscally sustainable.
Great. And then I believe Douglas is asking, can the money be raised that you need for this program to keep it as is?
I think the only way to raise that money is to get more funds from the state or the city. And so that's why, particularly at the state level, continuing to advocate for RPS is so important. As I have shared before, We took a hit going into next year, $7 million, because of something called the LCI, Local Composite Index, which is fancy formula that the state uses to decide how much of education funding should the state pay and how much should the city of Richmond pay. And things got worse for us because property values are increasing in Richmond. So the state said, well, that means Richmond's getting more tax revenue so they can pay more. The problem with that is a lot of the really valuable property in Richmond is owned by the state. Everything owned by VCU, the General Assembly, the Capitol, all of that. And none of that is taxable. So it looks like we have the ability to raise more taxes when in reality, we actually don't in many cases. And so the whole formula, in my mind, is out of whack. That's why we have a lot of good folks in the General Assembly advocating for us: Senator McClellan, Delegate Bourne, Senator Hashmi, Delegate Quinn, Delegate Carr, all working really hard to help take care of Richmond, but it's an uphill battle.
And can you clarify, the 10 positions available, will it only be available to current RVA staff, or can anyone in RPS apply?
Anybody could apply, but I would imagine, given the expertise of the RVA staff and the experience over the past year, that they would certainly be the front runners for those roles. Again, assuming that folks had experience and willingness to work with the student population that we're looking at.
And then LRE, or least restrictive environment, has concerns to be considered. FAPE also has some major concerns: free appropriate education for students. I think that was just a comment. Would that be legal, that new RVA kiddos not get the same programs, encore services that other students in person are getting?
Well, we would try to match the in-person experience as much as is possible, but truth be told, our homebound students aren't getting a full set of experiences as it is. And that's no fault of any of our wonderful homebound teachers. It's just there aren't enough staff to go around to provide all of the different experiences that kids need. I actually think they're going to get more through the virtual environment, and we would do everything we could to try to create as robust an experience as possible.
And would there be an information flyer for virtual options? A parent like myself who takes care of my 75-year-old grandpa and my 3 kids, so I'm very nervous about COVID. I think that's a wonderful suggestion. Our engagement team will work on that as well, and we will make sure those are in English and Spanish. And if that letter, Dr. Robinson, didn't go out in Spanish as well, we'll make sure it's updated, and all materials should go out in both languages. So we will make sure that we correct that, and we will get something family friendly about the different options, as well as numbers to family support line. If anyone needs help locating those, we have wonderful family liaisons, and I know you have virtual liaisons that would be happy to assist you with that. So thank you for that, Kaylani, I believe. If the students qualify for the new virtual program based on health issues, will physician documentation be required, or what documentation will be required?
I don't know that answer just yet. I think that's something that we'd want to work through with our program team and make sure we're taking the right and appropriate steps. Obviously, we don't want this to be a burdensome process. There will probably need to be some documentation as to the medical need. I just don't know exactly what that would be just yet.
And Andrea is asking, if students return in person, will those with great grading standards schools allow virtual students to advance their grade level due to different teaching methods using virtual?
I'm not sure I followed that one.
Yeah, Ms. McNeil, I may need you to clarify. I'm not exactly sure when you say great grading standards, if you mean like if students are accelerated from their work in virtual, would they be able to like test into another grade if they're advanced? But if you just clarify in the chat, I'll make sure I get back to that one. And then last one before I turn it over to you, Dr. Robinson. Many families cannot afford private or other tuitions for other options. The other options enrichment are prohibitive based on grades. This option being open to all would open the door for many of these students. It has been proven to be effective for all students, not just IEPs. Why can't we move any money around to make this a viable option for the students who are struggling in person?
Again, look, I would love to be able to do so. Just the dollars aren't there. As a reminder, we're starting 7 million in the hole, and we would have to find another 7 million for this program. So really, we would have to find $14 million in our current budget just to keep things the way they are. We'd have to cut $14 million in our current budget just to keep things as they are, make no additions. And I've scoured every line in our budget. I don't see any way we could do that without dramatically impacting the functioning of the school system. I wish it weren't the case, but that's the reality.
And I actually got some clarification, and then I'm going to have a follow-up. But Ms. McNeil said, yes, that's what she meant. So I believe that if a student does, based on their virtual education, feel like they're testing into a higher grade, would that be allowed?
I think, I don't know the advancement policies by heart, but I think those policies would apply whether you're virtual or in person. If a student has demonstrated an ability to be in a higher grade, whatever the policy says is what we would do. And that would be the same for virtual or in person.
And we have a couple questions asking about the current administration. Would that be the same for the new program?
Obviously, the current administration's on the call right now. I think they've done a fabulous job. And my hope is that we would have continuity at the leadership level as well. But those are conversations we would have to have with Dr. Robinson and Mr. Gale and see what their preferences are as well.
Great. Cindy, I'm on a roll right now, so I've hit most of them. So, and I know we need to end, and I want to give some time for some closing remarks. So I'm just going to take a couple more and echo what Francis said, that you have done an amazing job along with your team, Mr. Gale, the whole OWL family. I was going to hoot, but I just can't do it like you, Cindy. But I just, on behalf of all the families and families who couldn't be on tonight, we just want to thank you for your leadership. And again, in this proposed shift, our goal tonight is just to be transparent, ask as many questions as possible. If I did not get to your questions, please email me or Superintendent Camrus, and we will make sure that I will get to your questions. I was trying to skip around a little bit just to get some more voices, but feel free to email us if I did not get to your question or have a chance to read it. So a couple more questions, and then we'll end with some closing remarks. Who will be interviewing for these 10 positions?
Again, I think anybody who is interested, of course, I would hope that a lot of the current staff would be interested. We're not starting any of those processes yet until the school board makes their decisions. So we're offering the opportunity for folks who want to transfer, who just have made that decision for themselves and their families, to an in-person setting. We have a number of vacancies and feel like we're going to be able to quickly get people into other roles. But for folks who would want to stay with RVA, we need to wait a minute. Let's let the school board make its final decisions, and then we'll get going on that process.
And Superintendent Camrus, you talked a lot about funding at the state level. Can you give some more information on how people can actually go about advocating for more funds at the state level?
Sure. We have a great section of our website, an advocacy section. Maybe we can drop the address for that, Dr. Harris, in the chat. It gives you lots of great information, including all the different ways to advocate, who to call, what to say. I do think reaching out to your Virginia delegate and your Virginia senator is really important. You can call, you can email. They need to hear from folks about the importance of education funding. And you can get all of those numbers again on our website and also on the Virginia General Assembly website.
Great. And Dr. Robinson, I'll also send you a link when we send the letters to all of those advocacy websites and links as well. There are a couple questions that are wondering why we didn't survey parents about their intent before making a proposed recommendation.
Largely because I did not want to ask families a disingenuous question. I didn't want to ask you, hey, would you like the program to continue, when I felt we weren't able to continue the program. I thought that would be disrespectful to our families. And so I just wanted to be straight with everybody. Financially, this is what I think we can do. If I could find another solution, I would. And so I just want to be straight with everybody. This is where I think we are. I hope we're able to make this new version of RVA a permanent part, again, of the RPS family. But I always like to be straight with people. I never want to ask them for their opinion about something that I already know the answer to. And so that's the truth.
And then Chantel is asking, if you don't send your kids to school due to not feeling comfortable with the situation, do parents get prosecuted for not sending their children because they're not comfortable? I can take that one. This year, I've spent a lot of time supporting schools, leaders, and families around attendance. It is by law, families are required to send their children to school. We would want to make sure and would do everything to work with you to get your child in the right educational setting, especially for medical reasons or if you did not feel comfortable with the situation. But all children who are required to go in person, that is a family's obligation. And again, we support families all the time who may need additional supports, but we are also required by law to notify the state of any student who misses 5 days, 10 days, 15 days. We have different state accountability measures that we have to report if a student isn't coming to school. Our goal is to do everything on the front end preventative, including finding other options like virtual if a family needs it. So please reach out to us if that is something you want to explore so that we can support you in finding the right fit. Great question. And will there be a date to, I'm sorry, is there or will there be a date to set to meet with support staff? Let me try that again, guys. Will there be a date set to meet with support staff?
Who to meet with support staff?
Is this more like Dr. Robinson, help me out, or Ms. Braxton, you may have to clarify. Do you mean like kind of a staff meeting just with support staff? Is that what you're referring to?
I think that's accurate. I think this is about conversations with talent.
Yeah. I think that what we should do is let's see how things shake out with the school board next week. Then we'll have more clarity about, what are the parameters, and then I think we can have all those conversations.
Got it. Well, in the last 5 minutes, I really want to give an opportunity for Dr. Robinson or Mr. Gale to have any closing remarks. And then we'll have Superintendent Cameras and myself close it out. Mr. Gale or Dr. Robinson, if you want to start.
I want to say thank you to all the family and staff that showed up today. Just appreciate the support and just coming out and hearing the answers, and thank you, Mr. Cameras, for having us, as well as you, Dr. Harris.
Thank you.
I want to echo that we truly appreciate this time with you and getting to hear the vision and some of the preliminary ideas. All of our families and staff on the call, we feel your love and support. We know how much you love our kids. We love them too. And we're all here just to make sure that we're able to provide the best that we can with the resources that we have. And so thank you all so much for coming out and being a part of this continuing conversation. I am forever grateful to every person here and all of the folks who couldn't be here. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. We will get this done. And I'm excited about what this will look like in the future, and super excited that we will get to support our learners who have the greatest need. So let's move forward and do our very best. And Dr. Harris, you can do it. Hooty hoot.
I don't want to embarrass myself. I'm gonna practice, y'all. I will practice. Superintendent Cameras, and then I'll close us out.
Yeah, I just want to echo the words of thanks. I know these kinds of conversations are tough, but I really appreciate Dr. Robinson and Mr. Gale, your leadership, and everybody for honestly sharing your thoughts, concerns, feedback, ideas. I do believe we'll make it through this, and while it'll be, if this proposal goes forward, while it'll be different and smaller, it will be strong, and it will be important, and it will be valuable for kids who really need it. And so I'm very excited about the future for RVA, and I'm hopeful that we look back at this moment as a really proud one, where we have stepped up to the needs of learners who need us the most. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Cameras, and thank you for providing the space for us to just fly questions at you all night and answer them. I see people in the chat also thanking you for your time and just all of the answers. Again, Mr. Gale, Dr. Robinson, I feel the love coming from the chat about how amazing that you guys have been. We echo that. And to all the families, your feedback is so important. We want to hear all of it, and we encourage you. I love the suggestions about having something concrete around advocacy, as well as around, how do we navigate other options? So I'm taking that back, and we'll commit to put together a one-pager, just so you have all the resources in one place. So we will get that to you. Give me a couple weeks, Dr. Robinson, and we can collaborate on that. But I just want to thank everybody for your time, for your commitment, and am confident that these discussions will only help us to grow stronger. So thanks, everyone, and have a great night.